Hello everyone, my name is David Luchford and welcome to lesson 43 of my Ancient Greek course. In today's lesson we're going to be learning about adjectives in on and on. So we're continuing to study Ancient Greek adjectives. But before we do that, let's take a look at my virtual sets of shelves. If we do that, we shall see that recently Roman K has supported my channel, so has someone and Jose Maria. So a big thank you to Roman K, someone, and Jose Maria for recently supporting my channel. And in case you're wondering, Roman asked for his amphorae to be blue and yellow, which is why he has these customized virtual amphorae. Before we proceed with the lesson, I would like to say a huge thank you to everyone who has supported my channel in the past also. This brilliant collection of virtual amphorae is an unending source of inspiration and joy. I'm so grateful for all of the support that you've given me. And I'm also grateful for all likes, comments, and subscriptions. So please do be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy my videos, and to comment if you have anything to say about them. And if you would like to add a virtual amphora or virtual amphorae to my virtual sets of shelves, you can do so at the link in the description below. But now, let's talk about third declension adjectives. So far, we have met 2-1-2 adjectives, which use endings from the first and second declensions, and also 2-2 adjectives, which just use endings from the second declension. But there are also adjectives which use endings from the third declension. One type of third declension adjective is adjectives in on. So let's talk about adjectives in on, the first type of third declension adjective that we're learning about. Adjectives in on are two termination adjectives. They end in on in the masculine/feminine nominative singular and on in the neuter nominative singular. As a reminder, these adjectives being two termination means that they have just one set of forms for agreeing with masculine nouns and feminine nouns. They don't have a distinct feminine set of forms. So they've got one set of forms that's masculine/feminine and one set that's neuter. Moreover, these adjectives have oblique stems ending in on. So like third declension nouns have an oblique stem, so too do third declension adjectives. Adjectives in on also have an oblique stem, and their oblique stems will always end in on. Since the neuter nominative singular form ends in on, you can imagine them as using the entire neuter nominative singular form as the oblique stem that the endings are added onto. An example of one of these adjectives in on is the adjective eudaimon, meaning happy, fortunate, or prosperous. We can see that in the masculine/feminine nominative singular, the form used is eudaimon. In the neuter nominative singular, it would be eudaimon, with omicron nu as the ending rather than omega nu. And the oblique stem is eudaimon. So this is the stem that the endings would be added onto following the nominative singular form in the masculine/feminine, or following the accusative singular form in the neuter. Let's illustrate what I mean here by taking a look at how eudaimon declines. Here is the declension of eudaimon. We can see that it's two termination in that it has just one set of forms for agreeing with masculine/feminine nouns and one set of forms for agreeing with neuter nouns. In the masculine/feminine, it declines as follows: eudaimon, eudaimona, eudaimonos, eudaimoni, eudaimon, eudaimones, eudaimonas, eudaimonon, eudaimosin. In the neuter, it goes eudaimon, eudaimon, eudaimonos, eudaimoni, eudaimona, eudaimona, eudaimonon, eudaimosin. Now, you have seen the endings in bold before. Can you think of where you've seen the endings in bold before? To reveal the answer, these endings in bold in the masculine/feminine, a, os, I, es, as, on, sin, are just the basic set of third declension endings for masculine or feminine nouns. And the endings in bold in the neuter, os, I, a, on, sin, are just the basic set of endings for neuter third declension nouns. Now we know this masculine/feminine set of endings as being used in the declension of 3a nouns, like aner. For instance, aner goes aner, andra, andros, andri, etc. And we know this neuter set of endings here as being used with 3b nouns. So we could just remember that adjectives in on decline like a 3a noun in the masculine/feminine and like a 3b noun in the neuter, although they don't have mut in the stem like most 3b nouns do. Instead, their oblique stem ends in on. But in the neuter, the endings that are used are the same as those of a 3b noun. So we already know the endings that are used here. We just need to remember that adjectives in on and on use these particular sets of endings. Now there are just a few things I should point out before we move on. One of those is that we do have a unique masculine/feminine vocative singular form, just like we do for 3a nouns. There, the vocative singular form of some 3a nouns is a shortened version of the nominative singular form. And so we have that here as well. We've got a vocative singular form ending in on rather than one ending in on. The omega has been shortened to omicron in the masculine/feminine vocative singular form. Now I haven't listed a separate neuter vocative singular form, and that's because it will be the same as the neuter nominative singular form. It would be eudaimon. Now the last thing I need to note is that in the dative plural we have eudaimosin. This was originally eudaimonsin, but it's harder to say eudaimonsin than it is to say eudaimosin. Eudaimosin sounds a lot nicer. This is what we call the principle of euphony, which literally means good sound in Greek, from eu and porna. So, as with the dative plural of 3a nouns and 3b nouns, we just make it sound nice. And in the case of these adjectives in on, making it sound nice consists of dropping the new. So you drop the new at the end of the stem which ends in on in response to the sin being added. So in the dative plural, you'll have a stem that just ends in omicron with sin added onto it because the new has dropped out. And that will always be the case with these adjectives in on. Anyway, please do pause the video and note down the declension of eudaimon for it to serve as your paradigm for adjectives in on. Okay, so far the only adjective in on that we know is eudaimon, meaning happy, fortunate, or prosperous. By the way, this adjective is a compound of eu, meaning well or good, and daimon, meaning spirit or God. So if you are eudaimon, literally, you're blessed by a good spirit or a good God. there is a good daimon watching over you. And so you're happy, fortunate, or prosperous. Let's look at some other adjectives in on. We also have eupron, which means cheerful or merry. This comes from eu, meaning well or good, and the noun pran, meaning mind. So if you're eupron, you're of a good mind, meaning that you're cheerful or merry. Next we have the adjective kakodaimon, which means miserable or unfortunate. This is the opposite of eudaimon. And it comes from kakos, meaning bad or evil, and daimon, meaning god or spirit. And so if you're kakodaimon, you're literally being afflicted by a bad spirit or a bad god. Instead of being blessed by a good daimon, you're being afflicted by a bad daimon. And so you're miserable or unfortunate. Fourthly, we have the adjective sorpron. Sorpron is a very difficult word to translate. There isn't really one English word that captures the meaning of sorpron. And the virtue that this is the adjectival form of is sorprosuner, or in the English transliteration, sophrosiny. So if you want to look into it further, you can check out information about sophrosiny, because this is the adjectival version of that virtue. If you have sorprosuner, then you are sorpron. And it's something like being of sound mind, being sensible, being moderate, being prudent. It's difficult to capture in English, but we can get close to the meaning with these 4 words. Please do pause the video and make sure that you've got all of these adjectives in on noted down. Okay, we can now do some practice with adjectives in on. My first exercise for you is a parsing exercise. Here you have to state the gender, case and number of the 8 adjectives in on the screen. Please list all of the possibilities that you can think of in terms of their gender, case and number. Please now pause the video and complete the exercise. Okay, to reveal the answers. Number 1, kakodaimones, is masculine or feminine, nominative or vocative, plural. Number 2, sorprosin, is masculine or feminine or neuter, dative plural. Number 3, eupronos, is masculine or feminine or neuter, genitive singular. Number 4, eudaimon, is masculine or feminine, nominative singular. Number 5, kakodaimon, is masculine vocative singular or neuter nominative or accusative or vocative singular. Number 6, sorprona, is masculine or feminine accusative singular or neuter nominative or accusative or vocative plural. Number 7, euproni, is masculine or feminine or neuter dative singular. And finally, number 8, sorpronon, is masculine or feminine or neuter genitive plural. Number 8 can be deceptive because to get the correct answer, we have to look not only at the ending on, but also at the stem. The fact that we've got the oblique stem sorpron means that this ending on is the genitive plural ending. Remember, if it's masculine nominative singular, you won't have the oblique stem that's being used. You'll have the ending on, but it will be a shorter form. It would be sorpron, for example. But when you have the oblique stem ending in on being used, then the ending in orn is genitive plural, rather than masculine or feminine nominative singular. Okay, let's now do some practice with translation. Here I've created 4 Greek sentences which use adjectives in orn, on. I should note here that in number 2 you have the words terapaina and teraborn being used. Now, terapaina means maidservant and teraborn means servant, specifically a male servant. Now, a lot of the time you can just translate teraborn as servant, but here you should translate it as male servant, for reasons that I shall mention when we look at the translation. Please do pause the video and translate these sentences into English. Okay, to go through the answers. Number 1 is ho kybernetes tois euprosi nautais lege. Here, you should have put the captain is speaking to the cheerful sailors, or the captain speaks to the cheerful sailors, or the captain is speaking or speaks to the merry sailors. We know that it means this because we have the captain in the nominative singular, so he's doing the action. Then we have tois euprosi nautais. This is the cheerful or merry sailors in the dative plural. And then after it, we have the verb lege, meaning he, she, or it speaks or is speaking. And so we must translate this dative plural here using the word to. The captain is speaking to the cheerful sailors. You could have said to his cheerful sailors if you wanted, because Greek often leaves out the words his, her, its, their, etc. when those words are clear from the context. Number 2 is hermen terapaina estin eudaimon, hode terapon kakodaimon. You should have translated this one as the maidservant is happy, but the male servant is miserable. You could have just said servant rather than male servant, but I've specified it here to bring out the contrast between a terapaina, which is a maidservant or a female servant, and a terapon, which is a male servant. And speaking of that contrast, we know that there's a contrast here because of this men-de pair that we have. Men literally means on the one hand, de literally means on the other hand. So this says on the one hand, the maidservant, estin, is eudaimon, happy or fortunate. On the other hand, the male servant, we understand esti again, is miserable or unfortunate. We could have said fortunate and unfortunate instead of happy and miserable, which would have given us the maidservant is fortunate, but the male servant is unfortunate. You could have said either. And ladies and gentlemen, I have an illustration of that sentence for you. Hermen terapaina estin eudaimon, hode terapon kakodaimon. It's very sad, I know. But this does show us a very clear men-de contrast. Men, on the one hand, the terapaina is like this. De, on the other hand, the terapon is like this. Number 3 is he despoina kai tapaidia euprones eisin. You should have translated this one as the mistress and the children are cheerful or merry. Or you could have said the mistress and her children are cheerful or merry, understanding the word her from the fact that it's probably the mistress's children that are being mentioned here. I should note that tarpaidia are technically the little children, because paidion is a diminutive. A paidion is a little child. So well done if you said the little children or her little children in your translation. I didn't include the word little in my translation, and that's because you can sometimes translate Greek diminutives without reference to the fact that the thing is a little version of the thing. It depends upon the context, really, as to whether you think it's important or appropriate to mention that it's a little version of the thing. We know that it means this because we have the mistress. Kai means and here, since it's linking the mistress and the children. Tarpaidia, as I just implied, is the children in the nominative plural. And this is all nominative because we've got the verb to be. We've got they are. And then the adjective, the complement of the verb to be, the thing that we're being told they are, is euprones, namely cheerful or merry. Fourthly, we have hoi logoi ton kakodaimonon doulon ton despoten dus tumon boiusin. You should have translated this one as, the words of the miserable slaves make the master depressed. We know that it means this because hoi logoi are the words in the nominative plural. Since they're nominative, we know that the words are doing the action. We'll get to the action later on. But following the words, we've got ton, kakodaimonon, doulon. All of this is genitive plural. Ton doulon are the slaves in the genitive plural, but they're not just any old slaves, they are kakodaimonon doulon, meaning miserable or unfortunate. So this says the words of the unfortunate or miserable slaves. So we just have a plain deployment of the genitive here, and we translate the genitive using of. So the words of the miserable slaves, ton despoten is the master in the accusative singular, so he's the direct object of the verb. Dus tumon is an adjective, dus tumos, in the accusative singular, in particular the masculine accusative singular here, agreeing with despoten. But we don't know exactly the function it's playing in the sentence until we get to poiusin. Poieor is the verb to make or do. Here, they are making, because it ends in usin, we know that they are doing the action. And the subject was hoi logoi, the words. So, the words of the miserable slaves, poiusin, make, ton despoten, the object of the making, the master, dus tumon, depressed. So we had the master as the direct object, and then the adjective tells us how he is being made. He is being made dus tumon, depressed. Okay, exercise 3 is another translation exercise, but this time we're going from English to Greek. So I've created 3 English sentences here for you to translate into Greek. And I've glossed one particular phrase for you, namely, do bad things to. In Greek, you could use poieor with kaka, which is the neuter plural substantive or substantive form of the adjective kakos. So it means bad things. So if you want to say do bad things, you use poieor with kaka, and the person that you do bad things to goes in the accusative. With that said, please do pause the video and translate these sentences into ancient Greek. Okay, the first one is, the prudent king is writing a long letter. Here, you could have said, hoso pron basileus makran epistolean grape. I say you could have said this because the word order doesn't matter too much. Word order is very flexible in Greek. Ideally, I would have put makron on either side of epistolean, and I would have put sopron either in the sandwich construction or the repeated article construction with basileus. But apart from that, you could have had the units of the sentence in any order. You could have had makran epistolean at the start, for example. But you should have got the right grammatical forms. You should have got sopron, since basileus needs to be nominative singular. The adjective sopron, agreeing with basileus, must also be nominative singular, and because basileus is masculine, we need the masculine nominative singular form of the adjective, and that is the one that ends in orn. It's the unique shorter form that ends in orn, so sopron. We said makran epistolen because that is the accusative singular form of a long letter. We didn't put the definite article because we wanted to say a, and the adjective makros, meaning long, uses alpha in the feminine singular forms rather than eta because it's a 212 adjective with a stem ending in rho. Remember, 212 adjectives with stems ending in epsilon, iota, or rho use alpha instead of eta in the feminine singular forms. We said graphe because grapheor is the verb to write, and so we add a to graphe, and that gives us graphe in the contracted form. So this says, the prudent king is writing a long letter. 2 is the fortunate do bad things to the unfortunate. Here you should have said, hoi eudaimones poiousi kaka tous kakodaimonas. We know to translate it in this way because the fortunate is what we call a substantive adjective. It's an adjective that's being used as a noun. What this really means is the fortunate men or the fortunate people in general. And to form one of those in Greek, we take the definite article and we simply put the appropriate form of the adjective after it, which here would be the masculine nominative plural form, because that's the form that we would understand people or men after. So we would say hoi eudaimones for the fortunate. Then we want to say they do bad things to. Now, do bad things to is poie or kaka. Here we want poiousi kaka because they are the ones doing the action, namely the fortunate. So we want poie plus ousi, which gives us poiousi in the contracted form. Kaka stays the same. It's neuter accusative plural. It's a substantive adjective in its own right, meaning bad things. And tous kakodaimonas is also substantive, meaning the unfortunate. And once again, we wanted a masculine plural form of this adjective because we want to understand men or people after it. The unfortunate means the unfortunate people in general. And so we want a masculine plural form of the adjective, and in particular we want the masculine accusative plural form of the adjective and definite article because of the fact that the unfortunate are the direct object of the verb. As I said, poie or kaka is followed by an accusative. The person somebody does bad things to goes in the accusative case. Thirdly, we have I am giving the cheerful woman's gift to the miserable slave. Here, you shouldn't be too worried about the order, but you should have put something like To doron tes eupronos gynaikos toi kakodaimoni douloi didomi. Now, to doron means the gift, and here it's accusative singular. This is how it would look in the nominative or the accusative singular, since it's neuter. But it's accusative singular here because the gift is the thing that's being given. But it's not just any old gift, it's the cheerful woman's gift. Now, that literally is the gift of the cheerful woman. So we need the cheerful woman in the genitive in Greek. Now, you could have deployed that in a plain manner, just by adding the genitive phrase to the sentence, or you could have sandwiched it in between to and doron, or you could have used the repeated article construction. Either way, we needed tes eupronos gynaikos, meaning of the cheerful woman. All of this is feminine genitive singular. And then we also needed to the miserable slave. If something is being given to someone, then that person needs to go in the dative case. So we have the miserable slave in the dative singular. In particular, everything here is masculine dative singular because the noun doulos is a masculine noun. So this means to the miserable slave, and didormi is I give. Me is the I ending for me verbs in the present indicative active. Okay, that brings us to a summary of our learning for lesson 43. To summarise, third declension adjectives are adjectives which use endings from the third declension. One type of third declension adjective is adjectives in on. These adjectives use the basic set of masculine/feminine third declension endings in the masculine/feminine, and the basic set of neuter third declension endings in the neuter. We might think of them as using the same endings as 3A nouns in the masculine/feminine and the same endings as 3B nouns in the neuter, but not involving mat in the stem. Remember, adjectives in on have oblique stems ending in on. In addition, we've learned 4 new adjectives today, namely the 4 adjectives in on that are on the screen. And I've put the noun logos as a noun to learn. It's shocking that I haven't introduced this already. I know we have seen it already, but I haven't put it as a noun to learn yet. Logos is an incredibly important Greek noun. It's a 2A noun, and it has a lot of meanings. 4 of the most important meanings are word, speech, account, and argument. And those are the 4 that I've given here. But it can mean other things too, and I encourage you to look up logos in a Greek dictionary. As a fun fact, it gives us words like logic, and it's also related to the suffix ology in English. Ology comes from the Greek suffix logia, and that denotes a study of something, because you give an account of that thing in the study of it. So biology involves giving an account of life, from bios and the suffix logia, which denotes the study of something, but ultimately comes back to logos, which means an account, amongst other things. And finally, we have met a new verbal construction, namely poye or kaka, which means to do bad things to, or you could say to treat someone badly, and that person goes in the accusative. We do already know the verb poye or, but this is a particular use of poye or with the word kaka. With that said, let me say thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a like, and please do subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And please do leave a comment if you have anything to say about this video. You can see that I have put an ancient Greek frog on the screen for you, and we could caption this image by saying Chobatrachos estin eupron, meaning the frog is cheerful. To finish on that positive note, let me say thank you once again for watching, and I shall see you again next time.